She was a broke waitress who fed a starving old man digging through trash behind her cafe, giving him a meal without asking questions. Little did she know, he was the father of the city's most powerful mafia boss. Her simple act of kindness had just landed her a job offer she couldn't refuse. Mara's hands were shaking as she counted her tips for what felt like the 100th time. That was it. That was all she'd managed to make in an 8-hour shift at Dai's cafe, and the rent was due in 3 days. "Mom, can I get new shoes? Tommy laughed at mine today." Leo's voice echoed in her head from that morning. Her 7-year-old son, wearing sneakers held together with duct tape, trying so desperately to be brave. She'd kissed his forehead and promised him, soon. That word was starting to taste like a lie. The cafe was closing up. Mara wiped down the last table and grabbed the trash bag, hauling it toward the back alley. The October wind whipped through her thin uniform as she stepped outside. That's when she saw him. An old man, maybe 75, was bent over the dumpster. His weathered hands picked through yesterday's bagels and half-eaten sandwiches. He wore a coat that had probably been expensive once, but now hung loose on his thin frame. His face was gaunt, but his eyes, they were sharp, intelligent, like they'd seen way too much. Something in Mara's chest cracked. "Sir." Her voice came out softer than she intended. The man turned, startled for a second. She saw a flicker of shame cross his face before he straightened up with surprising dignity. "Evening, Mississippi." He hesitated. Pride and desperation fought a silent battle behind those sharp eyes. Finally, he nodded once. "Are you hungry? Come inside. The cafe's closed, but I work here. Come on, before you freeze to death." She held the door open until he followed her in. The warmth of the cafe wrapped around them as Mara locked the door and guided him to a corner booth. She moved quickly, knowing Danny would kill her if he found out, but she couldn't just unsee what she'd just witnessed. Within minutes, she'd scrambled eggs, toasted bread, and poured hot coffee. She set the plate in front of him with a gentleness usually reserved for Leo. "I can't pay you," the old man said quietly. "I'm not asking you to." They sat in silence as he ate. Not the awkward kind of silence, but the comfortable kind between two people who understood what it meant to be tired. Mara sipped her own coffee, watching the steam curl up from the cup. "You have kind eyes," he said finally. "Like my wife did before." He didn't finish the sentence. Mara didn't push. "What's your name?" she asked. "Salvatore." He pronounced it the Italian way. Musical, almost. "And you?" "Mara. Mara-chun. Chinese. My father. I never knew him." Salvatore nodded slowly, as if this information mattered. As if she mattered. "You have children, Mara-chun?" Her face softened. "He's 7. And his father's gone." The word came out harder than she meant it to, in the worst way possible. "Still breathing, but doing everything he can to make our lives hell." Salvatore's expression darkened for just a moment. Then he smiled, and it transformed his whole face. "Then Leo is lucky to have a mother who feeds strangers." They talked for another 20 minutes about the neighborhood, about how the city used to be safer, about small things that felt bigger in the quiet of a closed cafe. Salvatore was educated. She could tell by the way he spoke, the words he chose. This wasn't a man who belonged in a dumpster. When he finally stood to leave, he gripped her hand with surprising strength. "Thank you, Mara, for treating me like a human being. Everyone deserves that much." Something flickered in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or recognition. The world would be a better place if more people thought like you. He walked out into the night, and Mara went home to her cramped apartment, to Leo sleeping in his too small bed, to bills scattered on the kitchen table like autumn leaves. She didn't think about Salvatore again until the next morning. The black Mercedes pulled up at 10 a.m. right in the middle of the breakfast rush. Then another, then 3 more. Mara was taking an order from table 6 when the first suit walked through the door. Then another, then 5 more. They weren't customers. They moved like soldiers, scanning the cafe with predatory precision. The whole restaurant fell silent. Danny dropped a plate in the kitchen. The crash echoed like a gunshot. And then he walked in, tall, maybe 40, with dark hair silvered at the temples. His suit probably cost more than Mara made in 6 months. But it was his eyes that made her blood run cold, dark, calculating, and fixed directly on her. The man crossed the cafe in 4 strides. Every instinct told Mara to run, but her legs had turned to stone. Mara Chun. His voice was smooth, controlled. She managed a nod. My name is Adrian Bellini. He paused, as if the name should mean something. My father told me someone treated him with respect yesterday. Someone who didn't have to. Someone who saw a man, not a problem. The words took a moment to connect. Mara's eyes widened. Salvatore is your father? Adrian's expression softened microscopically. He hasn't stopped talking about you since last night. In 40 years, I've never seen him cry. From gratitude, you gave him something we couldn't. His dignity. The entire cafe was watching now. Danny stood frozen by the register, his face pale. Adrian reached into his jacket. Mara flinched, but he only pulled out a card, elegant, cream-colored, embossed with a name and number. I'd like to speak with you privately, when you have time. He set the card on the table. There's a job opportunity one think would interest you. I have a job. Adrian glanced around the worn cafe, at Danny still wiping nervously at the counter, at the tips jar that never had enough. His expression said everything. Think about it. He turned to leave, then paused. Salvatore asked me to tell you, Leo would look good in new shoes. Mara's heart stopped. How did he know Leo's name? Adrian walked out, his men following like shadows. The Mercedes pulled away, leaving only silence and 100 questions behind. Mara looked down at the card in her trembling hand. Everything was about to change. 3 days passed. 3 days of Mara staring at Adrian Bellini's card, tucked inside her apron pocket like a loaded gun. She'd Googled his name once, then slammed her laptop shut so hard Leo had jumped. The search results had been terrifying. Racketeering investigations, suspected connections to organized crime, a photo of Adrian leaving a federal courthouse, his lawyer beside him, both looking untouchable. She threw the card away twice, fished it out of the trash both times. On the 4th day, her ex-husband showed up. Mara was walking Leo home from school when she saw the familiar truck parked outside their apartment building. Her whole body went rigid. Leo's hand tightened in hers. Is that Dad? His voice was small, uncertain. Stay close to me. Marcus was leaning against his truck, arms crossed. He'd gained weight since the divorce, but his eyes still had that mean glint she remembered too well, the one that used to make her flinch. Mara. He said her name like an insult. Looking rough these days. What do you want, Marcus? To see my son? He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Is that a crime? You're 3 months behind on child support. You don't get to play dad when it's convenient. Marcus pushed off the truck, taking a step closer. Mara instinctively put herself between him and Leo. Funny thing, Marcus said. I talked to a lawyer. Real smart guy. He says, a mother working minimum wage, living in this dump, struggling to put food on the table. That's not a stable environment for a kid. Mara's blood turned to ice. You wouldn't. Wouldn't what? Fight for custody of my own son? He crouched down to Leo's level. Hey buddy, how'd you like to come live with me and Stephanie? We got a big house, pool in the backyard, nice school district. Leo pressed against Mara's leg. I want to stay with Mom. Marcus's smile faded. He stood up, getting too close to Mara. She could smell the beer on his breath. You got 2 weeks to figure out how you're gonna prove you can take care of him, he said quietly. Or I'm filing papers. And trust me, any judge is gonna see her drowning. He climbed into his truck and drove away, leaving Mara shaking on the sidewalk. That night, after Leo fell asleep, Mara pulled out Adrian Bellini's card. Her hands trembled as she dialed the number. He answered on the first ring. Miss Chun, I was beginning to think you'd decided against calling. What kind of job? Her voice cracked. What exactly do you want from me? Tomorrow, 2 p.m. I'll send a car. I need to know. Tomorrow, Mara. Come alone. We'll discuss everything. The line went dead. The car that picked her up wasn't a Mercedes. It was a town car with tinted windows and a driver who didn't speak. They drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city behind, winding through neighborhoods that got progressively nicer until they reached a gated estate that looked like something from a movie. The mansion was enormous. White stone, manicured gardens, a fountain in the circular driveway. Mara felt like she'd stepped into a different world. A woman in her 50s met her at the door. "Miss Chun? I'm Gloria. Mr. Bellini is waiting in his study." Mara followed her through halls lined with expensive art and dark wood paneling. Everything screamed old money and power. Finally, Gloria opened a door to reveal an office with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a massive oak desk. Adrian stood by the window, phone to his ear. He waved her in, finishing his conversation in Italian. When he hung up, his entire demeanor shifted, less businessman, more something Mara couldn't quite read. "Thank you for coming. I don't have much choice, do I?" The words came out sharper than she intended. Adrian studied her for a long moment. "You always have a choice, Mara. That's important to me. What I'm about to offer you, you can walk away. No consequences. I find that hard to believe." "Fair enough." He gestured to a chair. "Sit, please." Mara sat on the edge of the leather chair, every muscle tense. "My father is dying," Adrian said bluntly. "Lung cancer. Stage 4. The doctors give him 6 months, maybe less." Mara's breath caught. "I'm sorry. He spent the last 3 days talking about you, about how you made him feel human again. Do you know how long it's been since I've seen my father smile?" Adrian's voice cracked slightly. "Years, Mara. Years. I don't understand what this has to do with me. I want you to work here, be a companion to my father. Talk to him, keep him company, help him feel like more than a dying old man." Adrian pulled out a folder. "I'm prepared to pay you $8,000 a month. Full health insurance. A guest house on the property where you and your son can live. Private school tuition for Leo." Mara's mind reeled. $8,000 a month. That was more than she made in 3 months at the cafe. "Why me?" "Because my father asked for you. And because—" Adrian paused, as if the words were difficult. "You gave him something I couldn't. Kindness without an agenda. He needs that right now. This is insane. It's a job offer." "You're a criminal," Mara said quietly. "I Googled you." Adrian's expression hardened. "I'm a businessman with enemies who make accusations. I've never been convicted of anything. But yes, my world is complicated. Dangerous sometimes. That's why you and Leo would live here on this estate. Protected." "Protected from what?" "From men like your ex-husband." Adrian opened another folder. "Marcus Chun. 2 DUIs. Assault charge dropped when the victim refused to testify. Currently 3 months behind on child support while driving a new truck and living with his girlfriend in a house his parents bought." Mara felt violated and relieved at the same time. "You investigated me. I protect what's mine. And if you accept this position, you and Leo will be under my protection. That includes dealing with Marcus' custody threat." "How did you?" "I make it my business to know things." Adrian slid a contract across the desk. "Read it. Think about it. You don't have to decide today." But Mara was already reading. The terms were clear, almost too generous. 6 months employment, no illegal activities required, living quarters provided, legal support included. "What if your father—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "If he passes before 6 months, the contract pays out in full. You'll have enough to start over wherever you want." Mara looked at the paper, at the number that would change everything. She thought of Leo's taped-up shoes, of Marcus's threat, of the bills covering her kitchen table. "I need to think about it." "Of course." Adrian stood. "But Mara, your ex-husband filed preliminary custody papers this morning. You have less time than you think." The room tilted. "How do you know that?" Adrian's smile was cold. "I told you I know things." He walked her to the door, and Mara left the estate feeling like she'd just made a deal with the devil, even though she hadn't signed anything yet. But they both knew she would. She had no other choice. Mara signed the contract 4 days later, sitting at her kitchen table while Leo slept. Her hand shook as she wrote her name, feeling like she was signing away more than just 6 months of her life. The next morning, 2 moving trucks showed up at her apartment. "We're here to help Miss Chun relocate," one of the movers said, showing her a work order with Adrian's signature. Within 3 hours, their entire life was packed and loaded. Leo watched wide-eyed as his toys, books, and clothes disappeared into boxes. Mara had explained as simply as she could. They were moving somewhere nicer, somewhere safer, for a special job helping an elderly man. "Will I have my own room?" Leo asked. "Yes, baby. Will Dad know where we are?" That question hurt more than she expected. "It'll be okay, I promise." The guest house on the Bellini estate was nicer than anywhere Mara had ever lived. 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, hardwood floors, and windows overlooking a garden that looked like something from a magazine. Leo ran from room to room, his excitement temporarily drowning out Mara's anxiety. "Mom, there's a tire swing and a basketball hoop. Can we go outside soon?" "Let's unpack first." A knock at the door made her jump. Gloria stood there with a warm smile, holding a basket of fresh bread and fruit. "Welcome. Mr. Salvatore is very excited to see you. He's in the main house's solarium whenever you're ready." Mara left Leo unpacking his toys and walked across the manicured lawn to the mansion. Her heart pounded with every step. What had she done? What kind of world had she brought her son into? The solarium was a glass-enclosed room filled with plants and afternoon sunlight. Salvatore sat in a leather chair, a blanket over his lap despite the warmth. When he saw her, his face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. "Mara." His voice was weaker than she remembered. "You came." "Hi, Salvatore." She sat in the chair across from him. "How are you feeling?" "Better now. Tell me everything. How is young Leo? Did he get new shoes?" Despite everything, Mara smiled. "He did. And he's very excited about the tire swing." They fell into easy conversation just like that night at the cafe. Salvatore asked about Leo's favorite subjects in school, about what books he liked, about whether he played sports. He listened like every detail mattered, like he had all the time in the world, even though they both knew he didn't. "My son told me about your situation," Salvatore said eventually. "Your ex-husband. You don't have to worry about that." "But I do worry. You showed me kindness, Mara. Real kindness. The kind that's rare in my world." He leaned forward. "In my life, I've done things I'm not proud of. Hurt people. Made choices that haunt me. But you fed a stranger digging in trash without asking questions. That kind of goodness is precious." Mara felt tears prick her eyes. "I'm not that good. I'm here because I'm desperate." Desperation doesn't make kindness less real. It makes it more valuable. Salvatore coughed, and Mara saw how much pain he was in. "Now tell me about Leo's favorite dinosaur. I want to know everything." They talked for 2 hours. By the time Mara left, she felt lighter somehow, like maybe this wouldn't be so bad. That feeling lasted until she met Vince. He was waiting outside the solarium, arms crossed, watching her with eyes like a hawk studying prey. Tall, muscular, probably mid-40s, with a scar running through his left eyebrow. "So you're the waitress. Mara Chun. I know who you are." Vince circled her slowly. "I know everything about you. Where you were born, where you went to school, your ex-husband's blood type, that speeding ticket you got in 2019. Every last inch. Is there a point to this?" "The point is, you're too perfect, too convenient." Woman shows up out of nowhere, gets close to Salvatore right when things are heating up with the Costello family. "Makes me wonder who sent you." He stepped closer, invading her space. "Nobody sent me. Adrian offered me a job. Right? And it's just a coincidence you're exactly the type to make an old man drop his guard. I've been protecting this family for 20 years. If you're a plant, if you're working for our enemies, I will find out. And when I do..." "Vince!" Adrian's voice cut through the air like a knife. He emerged from the mansion, his expression thunderous. "Step away from her. Now." "Boss, I said now." Vince backed off, but his eyes promised this wasn't over. He disappeared into the house, leaving Mara shaking. Adrian turned to her, his anger transforming into something softer. I apologize. Vince is paranoid, but he's loyal. He'll come around. Will he? Because he just threatened me. He threatens everyone at first. Even me when I took over for my father. Adrian glanced back at the house. But you need to understand something, Mara. This world, my world, it runs on suspicion. Trust gets people killed. Vince has kept my father alive through 3 rival families trying to take us down. His paranoia isn't pleasant, but it's kept us breathing. What kind of life is this? Mara whispered. Adrian looked at her for a long moment. An honest one. We don't pretend to be something we're not. Unlike the politicians and CEOs who break laws in boardrooms and call it business, we know exactly what we are. He paused. But my father, he's different. He wants out of this life before he dies. He wants to remember being human. That's what you give him. Before Mara could respond, a child's laughter echoed across the lawn. Leo had found the tire swing. Salvatore appeared at the solarium window, watching the boy play with a smile that transformed his worn face. You've already made him happy, Adrian said quietly. In 2 hours, you've given him more joy than I've managed in 2 years. Mara watched her son swing higher and higher, his laughter pure and free. In that moment, despite everything of the dangerous men, the luxury that felt like a cage, the contract that bound her to this strange new world, she thought maybe, just maybe, they'd both found something they needed. She just hoped it wouldn't destroy them. The first week at the estate fell into an unexpected rhythm. Every morning, Mara would bring Leo to the main house before his new school bus arrived. Salvatore insisted on seeing the boy, asking about homework, teaching him simple Italian phrases, telling stories that made Leo's eyes go wide with wonder. Your mother has a beautiful name, you know, Salvatore told Leo one morning. Mara means bitter in Hebrew, but also bright and shining in Sanskrit. She contains multitudes. Leo, not understanding half the words, just nodded enthusiastically. Mom said you're teaching me to be a gentleman. The world needs more gentlemen. Fewer tough guys, Salvatore winked. Though don't tell the tough guys I said that. Mara watched these interactions with a warmth that surprised her. Salvatore treated Leo with a grandfatherly tenderness that made her ache. Her own father had left before she was born, and Leo had never known this kind of male attention that wasn't tainted with Marcus's anger. But it was Salvatore's relationship with Adrian that fascinated and broke her heart in equal measure. They were like 2 planets in the same solar system, aware of each other but never touching. Adrian would check on his father every evening, standing in the doorway of the solarium, asking about his health, his comfort, his needs. Always formal, always distant. Come in, Adrian, Salvatore would say. Sit with us. I have calls to make. You always have calls to make. That's how business is run. And Adrian would leave, something painful flashing across his face so quickly Mara almost missed it. On the 8th night, after Leo was asleep, Mara found Salvatore looking through old photo albums in his study. He invited her in, pointing to pictures with trembling fingers. That's Maria, my wife, Adrian's mother. He touched the photo lovingly. Breast cancer took her when Adrian was 15, right after his birthday. I'm so sorry. Adrian found her. She'd collapsed in the kitchen. Salvatore's voice broke. He called the ambulance, held her hand, told her everything would be okay. By the time I got home, she was gone. And my son had changed. The photo showed a younger Salvatore with a beautiful woman and a boy with bright, unguarded eyes. Mara tried to reconcile that boy with the controlled, dangerous man she'd met. He blamed himself, Salvatore continued. Thought if he'd found her sooner, called faster, done something different. And I was so destroyed by grief, I let him shoulder that guilt. I let him grow cold and hard because I'd become cold and hard. It's not too late, Mara said softly. Isn't it? Salvatore closed the album. I built an empire of fear. Mara taught my son that emotions are weakness, that love makes you vulnerable. And now I'm dying, and I don't know how to tell him I was wrong. Before Mara could respond, the study door opened. Adrian stood there, something unreadable in his expression. "It's late. Mara should go back to the guest house." "Adrian," Salvatore began. "It's late," Adrian repeated, harder this time. Mara stood, touching Salvatore's shoulder gently before leaving. As she passed Adrian, she saw it clearly. Pain, longing, fear, all battled behind his controlled exterior. He wasn't cold. He was terrified. The tension between father and son seemed to crack. Something felt different, a palpable shift in the atmosphere of the estate. Over the next few days, peculiar things began to occur. Vince started showing up wherever Mara happened to be. He wasn't overtly shadowing her, but he was consistently present. He'd be in the garden when she was picking flowers with Leo, in the kitchen when she was brewing tea, and lurking outside the guest house at all hours, seemingly at random. "He thinks I'm a spy," she confided in Gloria while they were helping to prepare lunch. "Vince thinks everyone's a spy," Gloria chuckled. "Even me, and I've been working here for 30 years. But between you and me, he's been extra paranoid lately. There's been some friction with the Costello family. Territory skirmishes, unpaid debts, ancient rivalries. It's making everyone on edge. Should I be concerned?" Gloria's pause spoke volumes, more than any words could. "Just stay close to the estate," she finally advised. "Don't go anywhere without letting someone know. And keep Leo close to you." That evening, Mara watched from the guest house window as a procession of black SUVs rolled up to the main house. Men in suits emerged and engaged in what appeared to be a very tense conversation with Adrian on the front steps. Even from a distance, she could discern the strain in his posture. One of the men glanced towards the guest house, looking directly at her window. Mara quickly recoiled, pulling the curtain shut, her heart pounding in her chest. "Mom," Leo called from his bedroom. "Can you help me with my spelling homework?" "Coming, baby." She attempted to concentrate on words like tomorrow and because, but her thoughts kept drifting back to the man's intense stare, Vince's persistent surveillance, and the growing realization that she had stumbled into something far more perilous than a mere caregiver position. Later that night, after Leo had fallen asleep, Mara heard voices outside. She peeked through the curtain and saw Adrian and Salvatore in the garden, engaged in what seemed like their first genuine conversation in years. Even from a distance, she could see Adrian's hands moving animatedly as he spoke, his usual composure faltering. Salvatore grasped his son's arm, saying something that caused Adrian's shoulders to slump. Then, incredibly, Adrian embraced his father. The embrace lasted only a moment before Adrian pulled away and headed towards the main house, head bowed, hands in his pockets. But that moment, that fleeting embrace, felt like witnessing something precious and fragile being brought back to life. Salvatore remained alone in the garden for a long time after Adrian left. When he finally turned towards his solarium, Mara saw tears glistening on his weathered face, illuminated by the moonlight. She then understood what her true purpose was there. It wasn't solely about providing companionship to a dying man. It was about giving a fractured family one last opportunity to heal before time ran out. The question was whether she would survive long enough to witness it happen, because the next morning, everything took a turn. Salvatore's cough had worsened dramatically overnight. By morning, he was running a fever, and the doctor insisted on complete bed rest. Mara spent the day in his bedroom suite, reading to him from an old Italian novel he cherished, bringing him soup that he barely touched, and watching him drift in and out of sleep. "You're a good girl," he murmured during one of his lucid moments. "My Maria would have loved you." "Rest, Salvatore," she urged. "Save your strength." "For what?" His laugh dissolved into a cough. "I'm dying, Mara. We both know it. Let an old man speak his mind." She held his hand, feeling how frail he had become, as if he might float away if she released her grip. That evening, when Salvatore finally succumbed to a deep sleep, the doctor assured Mara that he would be fine throughout the night. She decided to tidy up his study. He had mentioned wanting a specific book, and she hoped to find it for him. The study was vast, lined with books in Italian, English, and what appeared to be Latin. Mara ran her fingers along the spines, searching for the title Salvatore had mentioned. She pulled out several books, examined them, and returned them to their places. That's when she noticed it. One of the books didn't slide back into place correctly, protruded slightly, as if something was obstructing it. Mara pulled it out again, reached behind the shelf, and felt something solid. A lever. Her heart pounded. She shouldn't touch it. She should walk away, find Gloria, and inform someone. But curiosity, that dangerous human curiosity, compelled her to pull the lever. A section of the bookshelf swung inward with a soft click, revealing a hidden compartment approximately 2 feet deep. Inside was a single leather-bound ledger, thick and old, its edges worn from frequent handling. Mara knew she shouldn't look. Every instinct screamed at her to close the compartment and forget she had ever discovered it. She opened the ledger anyway. The pages were filled with names, dates, and numbers written in meticulous handwriting. Some entries were in English, others in Italian. But even without fully comprehending everything, Mara recognized what she was seeing. Transactions, deals, betrayals. Vincent Russo, $50,000. Testified against Franco Bellini, 1987. Detective Michael Morrison, $200,000. Provided raid locations, 1991 to 1994. Anthony Costello arranged hit on Maria Bellini, 1995. Mara's blood ran cold at that last entry. Maria was Adrienne's mother. Someone named Costello had orchestrated her death, but the entry was marked unverified with a question mark. She continued reading, discovering dozens of entries spanning 40 years. Individuals who had betrayed the Bellini family, those who had been bribed, and those who had mysteriously disappeared. Each entry was detailed with dates, amounts, and repercussions. This wasn't merely a record book. It was an insurance policy, evidence against scores of people, some of whom were likely still alive. I always knew someone honest would find it. Mara whirled around. Salvatore stood in the doorway, leaning heavily on his cane, his face pale, but his eyes sharp and clear. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to." "Sit down, Mara." It wasn't a request. She sat, clutching the ledger, feeling as though she had just opened Pandora's box. Salvatore moved slowly to his chair, lowering himself with a groan. "I kept that hidden for 30 years. Not even Adrienne knows it exists. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you found it. Because you're honest enough that I trust what you'll do with it." He gestured towards the ledger. "Every name in there is someone who betrayed my family. Some got away with it. Some paid the price. Some I never proved, so they're still out there." The entry about Maria, Anthony Costello. "I've suspected him for 30 years, but I could never prove it. My wife, Adrienne's mother, she wasn't just sick. She was poisoned slowly over months, made to look like cancer." Salvatore's voice trembled. "But I could never prove who did it. And starting a war without proof would have gotten more people killed." Mara felt nauseous. "Does Adrienne know that his mother was murdered?" "Yes." "Who did it?" "No. It would destroy him to know I've suspected for decades and done nothing." "Why haven't you?" "Because without proof I'd have torn apart everything we built, created a war that would have killed my son along with my enemies." Salvatore leaned forward. "But now I'm dying, and I need someone I trust to decide what happens to that book." "Why me? I'm nobody." "Exactly. You have no loyalty to my world. No debts to pay, no angles to play. You're just a good woman who fed a hungry old man." He smiled sadly. "That's precisely why I trust you." Mara looked down at the ledger, feeling its weight in her hands. "What do you want me to do?" "Keep it hidden. Give it to Adrienne only if he asks the right questions. If he's ready to know the truth." Salvatore's expression darkened. "But be careful, Mara. People have died for less than what you're holding." "Then why risk me finding it at all?" "Because I needed someone outside my world to see it, to understand what we've built and what we've lost." He coughed, the sound rattling in his chest. "And because something tells me you're going to need that information sooner than either of us wants." Mara returned the ledger to its hiding place, her hands trembling. She felt as though she had just been handed a bomb with a timer she couldn't see. As she helped Salvatore back to his bedroom, neither of them noticed the shadow that had been lurking in the hallway, listening to every word. Vince had heard everything, and by morning he would make his move. Mara awoke to Leo shaking her shoulder, his face pale in the early morning light. "Mom, there are men outside. Lots of them. They look scary." She bolted upright, her heart hammering. Through the bedroom window, she could see at least a dozen men in suits rushing across the lawn towards the main house. Something was terribly wrong. "Stay here," she instructed Leo. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except me." "Mom, do it, Leo. Now." She threw on some clothes and ran towards the main house. Gloria met her at the door, her face ashen. "Salvatore's gone. They took him during his morning walk." "What? Who took him?" Adrian appeared behind Gloria, and Mara had never seen him look like this. Raw fury was barely contained beneath a veneer of icy control. In his hand was a piece of paper, which he thrust towards her. "Read it." The note was typed and signed. "The waitress knows where the insurance is. She has 48 hours to deliver the ledger to the address below or the old man dies. Come alone. No police, no family, just her." Below was an address in a warehouse district downtown. Mara's legs nearly buckled beneath her. "I don't understand. How do they know I found it?" "That's what we're going to find out." Adrienne's voice was dangerously quiet. He turned to Vince, who stood nearby, looking both furious and guilty. "Lock down the estate. Find out who's been leaking information. I want names in the next 2 hours or you're all out." "Boss, I swear we've been careful. My father is missing." The explosion of rage made everyone in the room flinch. "Someone talked. Someone leaked. Find them, or I'll assume it was you." Vince paled but nodded, barking orders into his phone as he left. Adrian turned back to Mara. "Did you tell anyone?" "No. Only Salvatore and I knew." Her breath caught in her throat. "Wait. After we talked, I thought I heard something in the hallway. But when I looked, no one was there. Someone was listening." Adrienne's jaw clenched. "The Costellos have been sniffing around for weeks. They must have someone inside." "The Costellos? The same family from the ledger?" "Anthony Costello's nephew runs their operation now. Marco, if he got word that ledger exists." Adrian didn't finish the sentence, but his expression conveyed enough. That book contained evidence against his family going back decades. He'd kill to ensure it never surfaced. Mara sank into a chair, her mind reeling. "This is my fault. I should never have opened that compartment." "No." Adrian crouched in front of her, forcing her to meet his eyes. "This is my world's fault. You're just caught in it." "But Mara." His voice softened incredibly. "I need you to trust me. We're going to get my father back. The note says I have to go alone. You're not going anywhere near that warehouse." Adrian stood, pulling out his phone. "I have people watching the address already. It's a trap. They don't want the ledger. They want you dead and US desperate. But Salvatore is too valuable to kill immediately. My father knows things, has connections, holds secrets. Marco will try to use him as leverage." Adrienne's expression hardened. "But he underestimates how much I'm willing to do to get him back." Over the next hour, the estate transformed into a war room. Maps appeared on tables. Men with weapons arrived. Phones rang constantly. Mara sat in the corner, feeling helpless and terrified, wondering how her simple act of kindness had spiraled into this nightmare. Gloria brought her coffee. "Leo is scared. Maybe you should be with him." "In a minute, I need to." Mara stopped, a thought solidifying in her mind. "Gloria, does Salvatore ever talk about the old days? About where he used to meet people? About where he used to spend his time?" "Why? He told me stories about his wife, about the neighborhood, about places that mattered to him." Mara stood, her mind racing. "The night we talked about the ledger, he mentioned a place, an old social club where he used to conduct business. He said it was sacred ground. No violence allowed, even between enemies." Adrian looked up from his phone. "The Monarch Club. It shut down 20 years ago. Did it?" Mara met his eyes. "Or did it just become invisible?" Adrienne's expression shifted as understanding dawned. The Costellos bought it in the 90s, turned it into a front. If they're holding him somewhere that has meaning, somewhere that sends a message, it would be there. Mara finished. On sacred ground, showing that they don't respect the old rules anymore. For the first time since the morning had begun, Adrienne smiled. A cold, dangerous smile. You figured that out from his stories. He talks to me. Really talks. Not like. She gestured vaguely at the house. The men, the empire. Not like this. Adrienne stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to his men. Change of plans. The warehouse is a diversion. They're expecting us there, but we're going to the Monarch Club instead. Vince appeared in the doorway. Boss, we found the leak. Joey Marcetti, one of the drivers. He's been on Costello's payroll for 6 months. He heard everything through the door that night. Where is he? Ran. We're tracking him. Forget him. He's already done his damage. Adrienne, grab his jacket. Vince, take 12 men to the warehouse. Make noise. Let them think we took the bait. I'll take 4 to the club. I'm coming with you, Mara said. Absolutely not. Your father trusts me. If he's scared, if he's hurt, he'll need to see a friendly face. Not just. She waved at the armed men. An army. Adrienne opened his mouth to argue, then closed it. Something shifted in his expression. Respect, perhaps, or recognition that she was right. You stay in the car until I give the all-clear. Deal. As they prepared to leave, Mara looked back at the estate, at Leo being guarded by Gloria, at the life she'd stumbled into, at the choice she'd made when she fed a hungry old man. Everything had led to this moment. She just prayed they would all survive it. The Monarch Club was situated on a forgotten street where the city's memory went to die. Once, it had been elegant, with brass fixtures, marble steps, and a doorman in a crisp suit. Now the brass was tarnished, the marble was cracked, and the doorman was a security camera pointed at nothing. Adrienne's car idled 3 blocks away. Through binoculars, they observed 2 guards smoking outside the club's side entrance. Only 2 guards, Adrienne remarked. Vince's voice crackled through Adrienne's earpiece. That's wrong. The warehouse has 15. Because the warehouse is the trap, Adrienne retorted. They weren't expecting us to figure out the real location. Mara sat in the back seat, her heart pounding so fiercely she thought it might explode. Every instinct screamed that she should be home with Leo, far from this violent world. But she had seen Salvatore's face when he spoke of his wife, his regrets, and the life he wished he'd lived differently. He was a good man ensnared in a perilous world, much like Adrienne, perhaps. I need to go in, she declared abruptly. Adrienne turned in his seat. We discussed this. No, you decided. But think about it. I'm the one they asked for. If I walk in that front door, they'll bring me to whoever's in charge, to Salvatore, and then kill you. Maybe. Or maybe they'll talk first. By time, Mara leaned forward. Your father told me things about Marco Costello, his nephew. How he's trying to prove himself, to be the big man, to earn respect he hasn't really earned. So men like that, they talk. They gloat. They need to show how smart they are. Mara retrieved her phone. I'll call you. Keep the line open. You'll hear everything. When you know where Salvatore is, you can come in. Adrienne shook his head. Too dangerous. Everything about this is dangerous. But I'm the only one who can walk through that front door without starting a firefight. Mara met his eyes. Your father saved me, gave me a job, protected Leo from Marcus. Let me return the favor. For a long moment, Adrienne simply stared at her. Then he did something unexpected. He reached back and clasped her hand for a brief second. You're either very brave or very stupid. Can it be both? A faint smile touched his lips. When you get inside, mention the ledger immediately. Make them think you brought it, but keep talking. Stay visible. We'll be right behind you. Mara nodded, attempting to disregard the terror coursing through her veins. She dialed Adrienne's number, placed her phone on speaker, and slipped it into her jacket pocket. Then, she exited the car and began walking. The guards spotted her approaching from a block away. She kept her hands visible, walking steadily, attempting to appear calm, even though her legs were trembling. "I'm Mara-chun," she called out when she was close enough. "I'm here about Salvatore Bellini. I have what Marco wants." The guards exchanged glances. One spoke into a radio. After a moment, he nodded. Arms up. They patted her down roughly but failed to locate the phone in her inside pocket. Then, they escorted her through the club's front door. Inside, the Monarch Club was suspended in time. Dusty chandeliers, faded velvet curtains, and a bar that hadn't served drinks in decades. But in the main room, seated at a card table like kings of a dilapidated empire, were three men. The one in the middle was young, perhaps 35, with expensive clothing and cheap confidence, Marco Costello. The others were his muscle. And bound to a chair in the corner, bruised but alive, was Salvatore. "Mara," Salvatore whispered. "No. Why did you come?" "Shut up, old man." Marco stood, smiling like a shark. Well, the famous waitress. The nobody who somehow became important." "I brought the ledger," Mara said, praying Adrian was hearing everything. "Let him go and it's yours." "The ledger?" Marco laughed. "You think I care about some old book my uncle kept? Ancient history doesn't scare me." Mara's heart sank. "Then why?" "Because I want Adrian to understand something." Marco advanced closer. "His father isn't untouchable. None of them are. The old ways, the old rules, the old men who think they still matter. It's all finished." "You poisoned his mother," Mara interjected suddenly, recalling the ledger. "Your uncle did 30 years ago." Marco's expression flickered, surprise, then anger. "See, that's why the ledger matters. Not for me, but for that. Because if Adrian ever proved it, if he ever had evidence." He shrugged. "My uncle's dead. But blood feuds don't die. Better to eliminate the evidence and the witnesses." Like Salvatore, Marco pulled out a gun almost casually, and like you can't have loose ends. In her pocket, Mara felt her phone vibrate once. Adrienne's signal. They were in position. She just needed a few more seconds. "Do you know what's funny?" Mara said, taking a step closer to Salvatore. "Your uncle was wrong. Maria Bellini wasn't murdered." Marco frowned. "What?" "I read the entry. It said unverified with a question mark. Salvatore suspected but never proved it because it wasn't true. She really was just sick, just cancer." Mara was fabricating the story, but she saw Salvatore's subtle nod, playing along. "You're about to start a war over nothing. And killing us won't stop Adrian from coming. It'll just make him angrier. Guaranteed. He doesn't know where." The windows imploded inward. Adrienne's men stormed through every entrance simultaneously, doors, windows, even through the kitchen. Marco's guards barely had time to react before they were disarmed and subdued. Adrian himself entered through the front, his gun aimed at Marco's head. "Step away from them." Marco's confidence evaporated. He dropped his weapon, raising his hands in surrender. Suddenly, he was just a frightened kid pretending to be dangerous. "Adrian, I didn't mean to. You kidnapped my father, threatened an innocent woman, broke every code we have." Adrienne's voice was glacial. "Give me one reason not to end this right now." "Because you're better than me," Marco stammered. "Better than your father. Everyone says so. You play by the rules." "I am my father's son," Adrian interrupted, "and I protect what's mine." He pulled the trigger. The shot passed inches from Marco's ear, close enough to singe his hair. Marco collapsed, whimpering. "That was your warning. Next time I won't miss." Adrian lowered his weapon. "Get him out of here. Send him back to his family with a message. The old ways aren't dead until I say they are." While his men dragged Marco away, Adrian rushed to his father. Mara was already cutting the ropes, assessing his injuries. Dad, can you hear me?" Salvatore looked up at his son, managing a faint smile. "You came?" "Of course I came." Adrienne's voice trembled. "You're my father. Your mother would have been proud. The man you've become. I am sorry for being cold, for being distant, for—" "Stop." Salvatore grasped his son's hand. "We both made mistakes. But this girl—" He gazed at Mara. "She reminded me what matters. Not the empire, not the respect, just being human, being family." Adrian met Mara's eyes over his father's head. In that look was something that made her breath catch, gratitude certainly, but also something deeper. Recognition, a connection. "Let's go home," Adrian said softly. As they helped Salvatore to the car, Mara understood the truth. She hadn't merely saved a dying man. She had afforded a fragmented family one final chance at wholeness. And somehow, in the process, she had discovered a family of her own. The 3 weeks following the rescue felt like emerging from a vivid dream only to find reality even more exquisite. Salvatore's health deteriorated rapidly, as everyone anticipated. But something within him had shifted, or perhaps returned. He smiled more often, laughed at Leo's jokes, and held court in the solarium with a warmth that permeated the entire estate. "Your grandfather is dying," Mara explained to Leo one evening, when her son inquired why Salvatore was sleeping so much. "But he's not sad about it anymore, I think, because he's not lonely, because we're here, because we're all here together." Adrian underwent subtle transformations as well. He still managed business, still convened with his men, and still made the difficult decisions that sustained his empire. But he now made time for lunch with his father, for dinner with all of them, Mara, Leo, Salvatore, sometimes Gloria, and other staff members who had evolved into family over the years. "I never knew how to be a son and a boss," Adrian admitted to Mara one night after Salvatore had retired to bed early. They sat in the garden watching Leo chase fireflies. "My father taught me to be strong, but he forgot to teach me to be human. He's teaching you now through you." Adrian gazed at her, revealing a glimpse of vulnerability. "You showed him it was okay to be soft, to let people in. He's teaching me the same thing. It's not too late, for either of you, isn't it?" Adrian gestured towards the estate, towards the life surrounding them. "I've done things, Mara, bad things. There's blood on my hands that it won't wash off, that's for sure. But just because it's there doesn't mean you're stuck with it. You can still make different choices moving forward." He stayed quiet for what felt like forever. Then he asked, "What happens when my father's gone? Will you stay here with me?" The question just hung in the air between them, heavy and unanswered. Mara had been turning it over and over in her mind. Her contract was up the second Salvatore passed away. On paper, that meant she'd have money, complete freedom, and the ability to pick up and start over anywhere she wanted. But Leo loved it here. He loved the school, the wide-open space, the feeling of being safe. He truly loved Salvatore like the grandpa he'd always wanted but never had. And Mara, well, she'd grown to care deeply about these broken, sometimes dangerous people who were trying so hard to be better versions of themselves. "I don't know," she answered honestly. Adrian nodded slowly, accepting the uncertainty of it all. "Fair enough," he said. 2 weeks later, Mara received some official-looking papers from her lawyer. Marcus had dropped his custody suit. What's more, he'd signed away his parental rights completely. In exchange for what? Mara had to read it twice to believe it. A job at a construction company upstate, a year's worth of rent prepaid, and a strong suggestion that he keep his distance from his former family. That evening, she found Adrian in his study. "You didn't have to do that," she told him. He looked up from the paperwork he was buried in. "Do what, Mara?" "Marcus." "The job, the apartment, the suggestion." She made air quotes with her fingers when she said the last word. "I protected what's mine," Adrian said simply and firmly. "You and Leo are under my roof. That makes you family, and I protect my family." "We're not family, are we?" she challenged gently. He leaned back in his chair, considering her. "My father calls Leo his grandson. Leo calls me Mr. Adrian like I'm some kind of uncle. You've been eating dinner at our table for a month now. Gloria even baked you a birthday cake. If that's not family, then what is?" Mara couldn't come up with an answer because he was right. Somehow, in some completely unexpected way, she'd found herself woven into the fabric of this strange, dangerous, loving household. "The ledger," she said, changing the subject. "What did you do with it?" "Burned it," he replied. "What?" "Every single page. My father and I went through it together. He told me everything. All the suspicions, the betrayals, even the stuff about my mother." Adrienne's voice got rough around the edges. It was never proven, any of it. It was just fear and grief looking for someone to blame. Holding on to it just poisoned him for 30 years. "So you let it go?" she asked. "We both did. Some truths just aren't worth the cost of knowing them." He looked her straight in the eye. "You taught us that. When you walked into that club, you weren't trying to find evidence or win some kind of war. You just wanted to bring an old man home." He paused. "That's what family does." Salvatore passed away peacefully on a Tuesday morning in early December with Adrian holding one of his hands and Mara holding the other. Leo had visited him that morning before school, showing him a drawing of their family. Stick figures labeled Grandpa Sal, Mr. Adrian, Mom, and me, all standing in front of a house that looked suspiciously like the estate. "That's beautiful, Leo," Salvatore had whispered, his voice raspy. "Put it on my nightstand so I can look at it." Those were the last words he ever spoke. The funeral was huge. Men from a dozen different families, business associates, politicians, people whose lives Salvatore had touched in ways that were both legal and not so legal. But the only people who really cried were Adrian, Gloria, Mara, and Leo, who didn't fully understand what death meant but knew that his grandfather wouldn't be teaching him Italian anymore. A month after the funeral, Mara sat in the guest house surrounded by packed boxes. Her contract was officially fulfilled. She had the promised money, more than enough to start fresh anywhere she chose. Completely clean slate. There was a knock at the door. Adrian stood there looking like he was deeply uncomfortable. "You don't have to go," he said. "I know." He paused, struggling to find the right words. "I mean, you can stay. The guest house is yours if you want it. Leo's doing so well in school." And then he stopped again, clearly wrestling with what he was about to say. "My father's estate. He left you something." "What?" "No, I can't." 50% of his personal assets. Not the business, but his savings, investments, properties. He wanted you and Leo taken care of. Adrian handed her an envelope. "He wrote you a letter." Mara opened it with shaking hands. Salvatore's elegant handwriting filled the page. "Dear Mara," it began. "By the time you read this, I'll be gone. I hope I died well, surrounded by the family you helped me find again. I leave you money not as payment, but as gratitude. You gave me something precious in my final months. You reminded me how to be human, how to love without fear, how to be a father and grandfather instead of just a boss. My greatest regret was letting my world make me cold. My greatest joy in the end was learning that it didn't have to take my son. He's harder than I made him, but softer than he knows. You see that? Help him see it too. And Leo, tell that boy his Grandpa Sal loved him. Tell him to be kind, even when the world makes kindness hard. You saved me, Mara. Not from death. That was always coming, but from dying alone and unloved. That's the greatest gift anyone ever gave me. Salvatore." Mara was sobbing by the time she finished reading. Adrian stood awkwardly in the doorway, giving her some space. "I don't need the money," she said finally, her voice thick with emotion. "I know, but take it anyway. For Leo, for his future." "What about you? What happens now?" Adrian smiled, a sad but genuine smile. "I try to be the man my father was at the end, not the man he was at the beginning. I try to build something that doesn't require quite so much blood to maintain." He looked at her intently. "And I could really use some help. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm being an idiot. Someone who sees people instead of angles." "You want me to work for you?" she asked, surprised. "I want you to stay, not as an employee, as family." He paused, his expression softening. "My father was right about you. You make us better. All of us." Mara looked around the guest house at Leo's toys scattered across the floor, at the life they'd built here. She thought about Salvatore's smile, about Adrienne's slowly thawing heart, about how her simple act of feeding a hungry stranger had rippled outward to change everything. "I need to talk to Leo," she said. "Of course," Adrian replied. That evening, she sat with her son on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the estate's gardens gold. "Leo," she began, "how would you feel about staying here? Not forever, but for a while longer." Really? His face lit up. Can we stay in the guest house? Can I keep going to my school? If we stay, we're family here. That means being part of Mr. Adrien's life, part of this world. It's not always safe. But Mom, Leo looked at her with eyes that were too wise for a 7-year-old. We were never really safe before. Not really, not with Dad. But here I feel safe. And that, Mara realized, was the truth of it. She'd spent years running from danger only to find that real safety wasn't about avoiding dangerous people. It was about being surrounded by dangerous people who loved you. 3 months later, the estate held its first real family dinner since Salvatore's death. Adrien sat at the head of the table, but the atmosphere was warm, almost jovial. Gloria had made her famous lasagna. Leo was telling an animated story about something that had happened at school. Even Vince, surprisingly, had brought flowers for the table. Grandpa Sal would have liked this, Leo said suddenly. All of us together. Everyone went quiet for a moment, a wave of shared emotion washing over them. Then Adrien raised his glass. To Salvatore, he said, who taught us that family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choosing to love people who are nothing like you. To Salvatore, everyone echoed. Mara caught Adrienne's eye across the table. He smiled at her, a real smile, unguarded and genuine, and she smiled back. She'd come to this estate as a desperate waitress, accepting a suspicious job out of sheer necessity. She'd stayed because a dying man needed company. But she remained because somewhere along the way, she'd stopped being just an employee and become something far more important. She'd become family. And in a world of calculated deals and dangerous games, that simple human connection was worth more than all the money and power combined. Outside, snow began to fall, soft and silent, covering the estate in a pristine blanket of white. Inside, laughter echoed through halls that had been cold for far too long. Mara looked at Leo, safe and happy, at Adrien, slowly learning to be human again, at the life they'd all built together from kindness and courage and second chances. She'd fed a starving old man one morning without expecting anything in return. And somehow, impossibly, she'd gained everything.